Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our council meeting for this evening. Another gorgeous day that's still summer. Don't anybody claim it to be fall yet. This is the 31st meeting of the 144th Council of the Corporation of the City of St. Thomas. And are there any disclosures of interest from any of the members? Seeing none, we'll move on to minutes.
I have a motion that the minutes of the meeting held on September the 3rd, 2024 be confirmed. Moved by Councillor Wookey, seconded by Councillor Clark.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor of the minutes? Any opposed? Carried.
Next order of business, Committee of the Whole. Council will resolve itself into Committee of the Whole to deal with the following business. First committee is Strategic Direction and Development. First item relates to the City of St. Thomas Corporate Communications and Engagement Strategy. I have a motion that reports CMO 1324 relating to the City of St. Thomas Corporate Communications and Engagement Strategy be received for information. Moved by Councillor Baldwin-Sands, seconded by Councillor McCauley.
Questions or comments on the report? Okay, I'll go to Councillor Clark first, then Councillor Peters.
Thanks. Just wondering, it mentions that the report will come back to us. I was just wondering the timelines.
Go ahead.
Through you, Your Worship, we anticipate having this before the year end. I'm targeting optimistically November because we would like to get on this. So.
Okay. Councillor Peters.
Thanks very much, Worship. I look forward to the report coming back as well. The one thing I'd like to see somehow included, and as much as we are trying to be a paperless society and getting away from paper, not everybody is on social media. Our newspaper presence is not nearly as close to what it used to be. Our weekly distributed flyer magazine is a hit and miss, and a lot of people, it goes straight into the blue bin. You know, we've got good local radio media, but there's still something about the paper newsletter that comes out, you know, and again, I'm not looking for an answer tonight, but it's just something I'd like to hear the pros and cons of that.
Okay.
Yeah, through you, Your Worship, exactly. And we will have a print media portion of the communication strategy. And there's a lot of things that we, you know, with, as you said, the newspaper, the daily newspaper may not be a thing we can rely on anymore, but we can do our own. We can do, you know, City of St. Thomas newspapers that could go out on a regular basis. Calendars, I think, can have a big impact for, you know, that can provide messaging about different city services. So we'll be exploring all that, but I definitely agree. I think there's still a role for print media in our municipal communications package, and we'll definitely make recommendations on that. So,
go ahead, Councillor.
Well,
Peter.
perhaps you could talk to John Houston and Brett Houston at the Omer Express and A, encourage them to come to St. Thomas, but B, a little broadsheet newspaper sent out.
Well, that's a big paper. We could do the notices in big print in that one. Further questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Next item relates to the Housing Accelerator Fund, the second round funding. I have a motion that reports CMO 1224 relating to the Housing Accelerator Fund be received for information, and further that Council direct administration to proceed with option 1 as presented in report CMO 1224 as it relates to the Housing Accelerator Fund's second round funding application. Moved by Councillor Kohler, seconded by Councillor Baldwin-Sands.
Questions or comments? Councillor Peters.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. I realize this is a really tight timeline of the 24th that this needs to get in, but I really would appreciate the perspective from the planning department on what we are being asked to walk away from. You know, I don't know of all these 10 points, what the impact is going to be on planning and development in the whole community. Like, is this, if we do all these things that they're asking us to do, does that mean it's carte blanche citywide? Or is it specific for this? And then are we going to, if we do it specific for this and somebody else comes along that sort of wants to be in the affordable housing business. If you say yes to one, how do you say no to somebody else? But I really want to know what the planning impacts are of this. And, you know, even if we can have a quick turnaround of a report back next week, because this has the potential to, you know, some of the issues we've dealt with as a council, you know, parking on Mitchell Street recently, of adding parking spots. What is the impact on this on some neighborhoods? We already know what Bill 23, how Bill 23 has, you know, is allowing 3 units on a property, like my mom's old house on Tecumseh Street. Now we're saying 4 units. So before I would, if we're voting on this tonight to proceed, I will be voting no, because I'm not clear on the impact of all of this.
Mr. Pompili, tell us what the dangers are in this, please.
Yep, through your worship to Councillor's question, very good questions. It's always hard to kind of gauge what the impacts would be. And what I can say a couple of things, and I don't think it ties us down necessarily. The one initiative I believe you're talking about is dealing with the allowing 4 units as of right in residential zones. That's something that we have the option to do on a citywide basis, or we could take the approach of targeting certain areas where it may be appropriate to go in that endeavor. I don't see that there'd be huge impacts on the city for that, in that there are already large pockets of the built area of St. Thomas that has some flexible zoning that does allow these uses anyway, allows converted dwellings, allows options for owners to convert their building by adding more. A lot of it always comes down to what the capacity of that property is in terms of meeting all the zoning regulations, in particular parking. There definitely are some areas of the city that where even if it was allowed citywide, the lot fabric, really doesn't permit conversions of that type. Recently, province-wide and our municipality, as we were directed to, allowed us to implement in our bylaws regulations to allow up to 3 units as of right. So that right now is permitted throughout the city of St. Thomas. And the uptake on that has not been great. It's there, it's present, but it's not been great. And it does happen to properties that can support adding those units. And I see that happening here if we were to go and follow the direction or the suggestions that the federal government is asking to, request that municipalities, up it to 4 per unit. But I'd be happy to come back with more information, and also to when it's time to actually implement something, to look at the option of, rather than doing that initiative citywide, to maybe doing it on a targeted basis in certain areas of the municipality.
Well, thanks. I would appreciate a report, because to me, as soon as you say targeted basis, then we're contradicting what it says in point number 1, ending exclusionary zoning. If I read that correctly, this eliminating restrictions on height and setbacks. We're some neighborhoods, I can think of one that's gone up on Miller Street and another one that's gone up on, and 3 of them up on Alexandria, that, you start seeing that in some other neighborhoods that are traditionally a single-story home. And, even the setback issue, historically, those go to committee of adjustment to deal if somebody's going to change a setback. I know there's a nice apartment going up on Center Street, and committee of adjustment changed that. So I just, again, I won't support this tonight until I have better information. Thanks.
Thanks. My question was going to be along the same vein. At the start of page 2, it says many of the previously proposed initiatives put forward by the city in the initial application align with these top 10. My question was going to be, and I guess if it's going to come back in a report, that's fine. Which of them are we doing now, and because you said it included in the last one, and which ones did we need to improve on? And then I had some questions based on that answer, but I can wait till the report.
Sorry, Mr. Pompili, if you can answer any of them now, please do, and then I want to ask you, can we get this back in time? I don't want to miss out on the Housing Accelerator Fund. So if we're asking for a future report, I don't want to put it into the oblivion of future reports and miss out on the ability to use this accelerator fund.
Yeah, I know, I'll defer some of this to Taylor Mooney,
Great.
who's here. But some of the things that are in this report on the page that you reference aren't necessarily items that we are including in our submission, like ending exclusionary zoning. That's not part of our submission. It's just demonstrating what some of the ones that were the top 10 in the province that were successful in receiving some of the funding. I agree with you that that could be problematic in a municipality like ours, but maybe Taylor can provide some more input in terms of timing.
Happy to have Taylor give her input on this, please.
Hi, everybody. Thanks very much. I just wanted to highlight, first of all, Councillor Clark's question. So a lot of them that we put forward in our previous application last year do align, maybe not specifically exactly with the wording that CMHC has proposed in their top 10, but just to highlight some from the previous report. So the development of a community affordable housing strategy is something that is part of their top 10 that we proposed last time. Enhancing our CIP incentives to promote and facilitate uptake of ADUs. Another one was create and improve the process of disposal of city-owned land assets for the development of affordable housing. Another was implementing a community planning permit system, which just increases efficiencies in the planning process, which was a part of their top 10. So there are a number of them that we did put forward last time that we feel are still in line with those best practices list. And then the others that we need to sort of fill in and tweak a little bit. The group that includes Lou and myself, we've sat down previously and talked about how we can tweak our other 3 out of 7 to align with these top 10. So there won't be anything drastic in changing what initiatives we do put forward, but hopefully that provides some clarification on which ones do align and which ones we do need to tweak a little bit. And then I just wanted to highlight that the application is actually due this Friday if we are to proceed with our application from the city's perspective. So we would need a decision tonight specifically on that, allowing 4 units as of right, as it is a minimum requirement of an application for the second round of funding.
Supplementary then. So could we go through those ones that need tweaking and talk about that tonight then? What are you going to need to tweak? And what have you and Lou talked about? Because if we had that information, you may get more people in favor of the report and get it passed tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Just let me pull up some information. And really, I should also just say that a lot of what we did talk about previously in our first application that we put forward, we think that we were kind of oversubscribed a little bit. Our previous application, the number that came out and the funding that we could be eligible for was, I believe, around $32 million. And just based on successful applications that we've seen so far for this first round of successful applicants, for populations the same similar sizes as ours, they're looking at between sort of that $10 to $15 million range. So really what will come out of this is less units that we're putting forward, so less funds that we're asking for, but we hope that that will give us a chance to be successful in our second round application, as to not ask for too much funding from CMHC. But let me just pull up this list here. So the third one was sustainable urban intensification and infill development. So just based on their top 10 list, we felt, sorry, it's hard to go back and forth here. Lou, are you still on there too? Sorry, I can't see you right now, but I'm just trying to find from their top 10 list where we were aligning these two.
Yes, like, sorry, Taylor, I think from what I understand, the top 10 list for CMHCs were, number one was ending exclusionary zoning. Is that the list you're looking for? That list?
Mhm.
Make municipally owned lands available for housing, increase process efficiency, prioritize or enhance development approvals process, comprehensive review of development charges and fee schedules. Number 6 was reduce or eliminate parking standards. 7, eliminate restrictions, height, setbacks. And number 8, develop affordable housing community improvement plans. Number 9 was design and implement guidelines for pre-approved building plans. And number 10 was develop grant programs. Many of these we're already initiating. But I think the list that we're bringing forward in this submission is just, we reworked our initial submission with some of those initiatives that we've done to be more realistic in terms of what the unit outcome would be and what those cost benefits would be for us, because I think we were out of whack from what I understood with the first submission. So we've updated and improved that, and we tried to bring in, mesh in some of the top 10 with our revised list. And I think the only one that we weren't certain on whether council was in support of it was the main one around, which is what we were talking about at the start of this section, was whether council supports us, including having bringing forward changes that would allow, as of right, 4 units in all residential zones in the city. Taylor, I don't know if you've found the list, the revised list of what our actual submission would be, if you wanted to go over that.
Yeah, I'm just looking here. So we talked, one of the other options that we were looking at was promoting infill and intensification. So that would be through some sort of grant program to provide increased incentives for those sorts of projects in specific areas of the city where infill makes sense. The other one was partnering with nonprofit housing providers to increase our stock of affordable housing throughout the city. Again, that's something that the city already is doing and has a lot of successful projects in that area. So really just emphasizing programs and partnerships for that sort of initiative, because we do have some coming down the pipe that we believe would tie in nicely to this sort of initiative. And then the last one that I'm looking at here, if I can go back to it. It was the comprehensive review of development charges and fee schedules, which we had Dan Sheridan as part of our conversations, is something that the city is looking at doing soon. So we thought that one tied nicely into this process, as well as, like I said, these are all things that we're already doing, so we might as well include them in our application and hopefully create something that's successful.
I just ask a blanket question. If we go with the submission that comes with this report, do we qualify for the Housing Accelerator Fund or no?
It's not guaranteed, but really the purpose of this report was that minimum requirement of the 4 units as of right. We do need council's support, not tonight to do that, but to provide a commitment from council that we will do that as part of our application, because without that, we just won't apply for this fund at all, because it is a minimum requirement. They won't even look at our application if we don't commit to that. But like I said, it's not a guarantee that we will receive this funding. There will be lots of applicants, like there was for the first round. But we really are just looking to, based on these best practices, create a more successful application than we had previously.
I'm going to go to some other councilors, but my question was, do we qualify if we do that? If we don't qualify, then there isn't an argument.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Through your worship, I think if we were to advance what we've included in the report, as with the allowing the 4 units as of right, we would meet the minimum qualifications to make an application for the Housing Accelerator Fund. So it sort of gets us in the game for
It doesn't
availing
guarantee
ourselves
it.
some of
It
the
just
funding
gets
options.
we're not in the game if we don't. Okay, Councillor Herbert next, and Councillor Woodley.
Thank you, Worship. I'm with you on this. I don't think we want to miss what's going to happen dollar-wise if we don't submit it in time. And I think when the government's telling you that these are the 10 things you should be looking at, I'm hoping most of them will be addressed when we submit it. So I'm going to support that we do this because I don't want it to be delayed and miss it. So anyway, thank you.
Councillor Woodley.
Thanks, Your Worship. What I'm hearing is that there's been very little uptake on, relatively speaking, on multiple units per lot. Okay, so I don't think us going to 4 is going to be an avalanche of 4. I think we need to do it because of what we've just been told. And what I'm also hearing is that us saying yes to this does not mean that this is going to be open season in the whole city for all this stuff. I mean, there's a few on this that I would not support citywide, but that's not what we're talking about tonight. So again, I don't want to miss out on this, and I think that our staff has our best interests in mind, so I'll be supporting it. Thanks.
Further discussion. Councillor Clark, back to you.
Thanks. Well, the two I was concerned about was 6 and 7. And it doesn't sound like we're doing it and making any changes with those at this time. Is that correct?
Yes, we're not doing any reduction or elimination of parking standards, and we're not talking about doing elimination of restrictions and flexibilities for height and setbacks. That's correct.
Thank you.
Further input, further questions? Seeing none, all in favor of the report? Are there any opposed? There is one. That is carried.
Next item,
Thank
Your Worship, is municipal financial assistance request from the Inn. I have motion to report SCSS 0924 relating to municipal financial assistance request from the Inn be received for information, and further the council approve a one-time investment of $195,000 to offset the Inn's current operating deficit. Moved by Councillor Wookey, seconded by Councillor Gibson.
Questions or comments? Councillor Wookey.
Thanks, Your Worship. When I read this, I thought this is a real asset to our city. We've not really had to do much for this. It's been run by a wonderful group and they need our support. And I think that it'd be a disservice to all the good things that are happening if we didn't do this. Although, we don't want to spend our money on things that we haven't in the past, I think in this case, there's quite a bit of merit to this, and unless I hear otherwise from my colleagues, I'll heartily support this. Thanks.
Further questions or comments? Councillor Peters?
Thanks, Your Worship. Couple comments. Do we know if a request was made to the County of Elgin? Because I would assume, without seeing any sort of census data for the users of the inn, that I can't believe that all these individuals would be strictly from the city of St. Thomas. So I'd be curious to know whether they've asked for money from the county.
Great point. Ms. Nielsen?
Good evening, Council and Your Worship. Thank you for the question, Councillor Peters. For this particular one-time assistance, I can confirm that there has not been a request to the county at this time. We are in a cost-sharing arrangement with the county for all social service provisions, so there is an ongoing contribution from them. We certainly can look at your question, have a conversation with the county, and that should absolutely be considered when we look at potentially putting a request before Council for an ongoing contribution.
I like the thought. Councillor Peters?
A couple other things, Your Worship. I trust that there's going to be a comprehensive, I sort of sense that reading this, a comprehensive report at budget time.
Yep.
Because what troubles me is, and I'm afraid we're going to see more of this, where the province comes to the table, helps support a program, and then they back off, and we have nowhere to go other than to support the program, or we watch it collapse. And, I know that there's a number of other funds that have been allocated to social services that scare me, that if all of a sudden the province says no to it. So as I say, I'll look forward to this at budget time. My final comment, Your Worship, on this is if we're going to do this, and I will support it, but we need some, and I saw Brian was on here. We need some help from the inn. We need, I've had more complaints this summer about shopping carts, alleyway full of individuals, stuff being left around. And I've used this term a couple times before, and we really, really, really need the inn to be a good neighbor. And I know that staff, my understanding is the staff have had some discussions and are looking at some things, but this location has caused some challenges downtown. Anyway, I just ask that be relayed back, and I know Brian is on here. Thank you.
Ms. Nielsen, anything on that?
Just to comment that I can definitely appreciate the challenges that do happen in and around the shelter and the challenges related to its location. I can say in terms of my relationship with Brian and the inn, they are a good partner and a responsive partner, and they require the support of us and the municipality and surrounding community partners to ensure that the needs of the folks are being met in a way that can help to mitigate those challenges. So I respectfully receive your comments, Councillor Peters. I know that Brian is very receptive to looking at all opportunities to continue to be a good partner and a good neighbor, and they need our support and able to truly achieve that outcome.
Thank you. Councillor Herbert?
Thank you, Worship. Well, certainly I support giving you the money for sure, but I do have two questions with it. Obviously, it's a big challenge for the inn, and it's a big challenge for the city because you take two steps outside of the inn and you're on city property. So that's a big challenge to start with. But anyway, when they approach you, whoever approached you, saying we need 195,000, do you sit down with them and go through a budget thing and say, yes, yes, yes? Like you totally agree in the end with them? And secondly, does this mean next year's budget will have to include 195,000?
Through your worship, thank you for the question. Yes, so the answer to your first question is yes, we've been engaged with the inn more than just this year, last year as well. We could forecast and project that there would be a request coming forward from the inn for financial support on the other side of us exhausting all opportunities to not ask for a contribution from the tax dollar. The window of time in terms of when the one-time assistance was needed was a little bit shorter than what we had anticipated. So we are coming to you with a quick request for an advanced turnaround. But we have been in consultation and engagement with the inn for months leading up to this. So we are aware of their financial records. We're aware of their efforts to be fiscally responsive. And as staff, we support their request for this one-time assistance. In terms of your second question, so we're still working through what the ongoing municipal contribution would look like. This request is to get us to the end of this calendar year. The request that will be put in front of council as part of your budget process will be looking at what they're in need of in terms of a municipal contribution for a full year. So those numbers may be different than the 195.
Councillor Clark, then Councillor Kohler.
Thanks. I'm going to be supporting the request tonight. My comments would be though that, the complaints about the location of the inn, we chose that location. So for better or worse, at the time we were trying to make a quick investment. We were losing the old site and we had an opportunity. But I think as we try to move forward and assess whether or not the inn needs to be bigger, smaller, different location, we're making a lot of progress. And so I'm hoping in the future, there'll be less people at the inn because we're providing more stable housing. And we seem to be making headway every year on that. And so I guess my hope is that as we continue to talk about what they need and how we'll support them, that part of the conversation will be, what will the inn look like in the next 3 years or 5 years? And will we be able to make things work at that location, or do we need to look at another location because the needs have changed one way or the other?
Yeah, if I can reiterate to what Councillor Clark has said, that was this council's decision, knowing that it could become supportive housing if it was no longer needed as emergency sheltering. And I really do see that on the edge of the horizon. It's not tomorrow, but we're moving very well towards stabilizing housing in this community. So thank you, Councillor Clark, for saying that. And in the report, it also brings up the numbers of people. I think it was 65 people who have found either other housing or we've been able to help because they've been at our emergency shelter. So as we move forward with more supportive housing, we'll be able to one day say, hey, you remember when? And you're right, the costs go down the less people that are there. Councillor Kohler?
Thanks, Your Worship. Just, on the location, I think no matter where we have it, people would have an issue with where that is. And some of the places that they would suggest they might like, there would be added costs just to get the people to the services that they require. When you look at the location, everything they utilize is pretty much in that area or in the downtown core, right? So as far as location, we're never going to pick out the right one. There's always going to be the worst one. I trust staff. You have the information to make decisions like this easier for me. I prefer to see that information as well. So hopefully council will be able to see the financials that you're looking at too. I am going to support this tonight because I see the need in it, but also when we're talking about where the money's going to come from, hopefully I'm sure that you have done this already, look to make sure that Chippy is exhausted. Anything else that we could look at for that. But personally myself, I hope that I would like to see the information that you have, that you're presenting this recommendation for us, so I can feel comfortable with my decision. But I do trust that staff has that and accept the timeliness on it, and that's why I'm going to support it. But certainly would like to have that information.
Thank you, Councillor Kohler. Is there other comments or questions? Ms. Nielsen, do you have any other further input?
No, just to say thank you very much for your ongoing support and endorsement of these critical services. We certainly need them right now, and we hope to work our way out of that situation as soon as possible.
Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Thank you.
Next item relates to a notice of a public meeting from the Committee of Adjustment for an application for a minor variance. The meeting takes place on September 26th at 10 a.m. And it's for an application to permit a minimum of 111 parking spaces, whereas the zoning bylaw requires a minimum of 133 parking spaces relating to a new drive-through restaurant and retail space at 400 Highbury Avenue. Your Worship, if there's no further items for this committee from the members.
Councillor Clark?
Just a comment. I've been on council 10 years and I'm still puzzled by what is a minor variance and what isn't a minor variance. And, and I'm being serious. I'm not trying to be facetious, because you're going from, we're asking for our requirements are 133. They're asking for 111. For years now, we keep saying we're going to be changing our standards, whether it's size of lots, size of driveways, setbacks and things like that. And it drives me nuts when these things come forward. So that's my comment.
Mr. Pompili and City Manager, I saw you both move towards answering that minor or major question. So City Manager first.
Your Worship, through you, I'm not going to try to answer the minor major question, but I can say that we do have a draft report now on Committee of Adjustment. It does have a couple recommendations to it. And it's just on Mr. Pompili's desk right now for him to give a once through. And then I would hope to see it presented to council in October. So it'll have some recommendations, and it also kind of flushes out the minor variance tests and some other details regarding Committee of Adjustments.
Councillor Peters?
Thanks. And, I look forward to this report because a few of us have asked, and, I know Councillor Clark is very familiar with another one out there that the neighbors were opposed to, but because of all the changes, they couldn't appeal the decision. But we as a council didn't meet, so we wouldn't have known what the decision, and we're the only ones that can appeal a decision after it's made. And that is extremely frustrating, and I know it extremely frustrated some residents on Mary Buck.
Mr. Pompili?
Yeah, through your worship, with regards to the notice that's on this particular agenda, That item is truly a minor variance application, and the fact that there's one floor plate left in this plaza, commercial plaza at Ron McNeil and Highbury. It's now a new tenant is going there, which is a restaurant. The parking rates for restaurant are quite high because there's other restaurants there. When the site plan was initially approved for that, it already had an allotted number of parking spaces for that to assume the entire build out, which was 111 spaces. So, but because of the zoning requirements in our zoning bylaw, it actually requires 133. So they need relief to those requirements. And it is really minor in nature in that the take up rate for parking that is very low there. So there's going to be no impacts, very little impacts on allowing this one to go through.
Well, it'll be, I'll bet you a donut, because when you have 3,000 workers from PowerCo and other factories landing there daily, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yep. Next item, this isn't one we vote on, so.
Your worship, if there's no further items for this committee, we'll now move to community engagement and services. No items on the agenda at this time unless there are any items from the members. And seeing none, we'll now move into infrastructure and civic operations. No items on the agenda at this time unless there are any items from the
Councillor
members.
Peters.
I just wanted to say a shout out to our water staff
Yeah.
and our health unit. I was away when the boil water advisory, because my house was affected by it.
Right.
And I can tell you that I came home, there was notifications for the house. I've talked to some other neighbors when I got back last night, and they were very appreciative of how they were notified. And I also know staff went above and beyond on some certain situations as well too, to accommodate some individuals. So I just, on behalf of the St. Catherine Street neighborhood that was affected by all this, just to say thanks.
And you've run your tap for a little while now.
First thing I did when we came home last night was run the taps.
Well, thank you, Councillor Peters, for recognizing the staff and the hard work they had to do over a weekend with this problem. So thank you, and the health unit also. Councillor Kohler?
Thanks, Your Worship. Just like a while back, I've been working with staff, and Michael actually helped out with this as well too. But a while back, we amended a bylaw which affects the height of weeds and grass, and it's now we're allowing for naturalized gardens. So I expressed concern at the time, and I thought it might take a little bit longer for my concerns to come true, but it hasn't. Unfortunately, I've been getting a lot of calls on areas that were cut at one point in time, and through the bylaws, and people would express concerns with the condition of the property, and they'd submit a customer request. Staff went out, addressed it. The property was cut. These properties are now deemed naturalized with really, in my opinion, I went by too, and I know Michael has gone by too, and it does fit within the amended bylaw. But in my opinion, there's no difference as to what that property looks like before we were making them cut it. And now these neighbors are forced to look at it, and it's just as bad as the roundabout that we come into from that Central Elgin has. And exactly, I'm afraid now as this continues and more people decide to naturalize their areas, we're going to be forced into this. So I'm hoping that we may look at this again in the future, because in my opinion, I look at some of the city-owned property where that's been done, and yeah, it didn't look too good, but some of the areas are looking a little bit better now. But I certainly, some of the ones that have been brought to my attention that fall within this bylaw do not look very sightly.
Are you asking for a report back or a further discussion at a later date, or?
Well, I think as more people get called on it, but I know when we talked about this, that there was going to be a review, and I'll look at that, because I think more and more people are going to hear the same thing as you drive around and see what's going on.
Thank you. Councillor Peters?
Just in support of Councillor Kohler, your worship, on this one, because I've had, some complaints as well. And, as I drive around, I notice things. I can see one spot on Elm Street, south side of Elm Street, right beside the railway tracks. The cemetery cuts the grass so the stone wall looks really good. And then you see this big tall line of weeds. So I look forward to the review coming back, but I hope perhaps we can analyze customer service data to see how many complaints have come in this regard.
Great question. Anything else under infrastructure and civic operations? Seeing none?
We'll now move into corporate governance and administration. Nothing on the agenda at this time unless there are any items from the members.
Seeing none?
Council will now reconvene into regular session. I have a motion that the recommendations, directions, and actions of council and committee of the whole as recorded in the minutes of this date be confirmed, ratified, and adopted. Moved by Councillor Baldwin-Sands, seconded by Councillor Gibson.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
No reports of committees this evening. Next order of business are petitions and communications. First one is a request for proclamation and flag raising from the Lord Elgin branch of the Legion. I have a motion that Council of the City of St. Thomas proclaims September 15th to 21st, 2014 as Legion Week in the City of St. Thomas, and further that the Legion flag be flown at City Hall from September 15th to 21st, and further that a flag raising ceremony be held on September 16th, 2024 at 11 a.m. Moved by Councillor Herbert, seconded by Councillor Gibson.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Next item is a request for a proclamation and flag raising from St. Thomas Elgin Local Immigration Partnership. I have a motion that Council of the City of St. Thomas proclaims September 13th to 22nd, 2024 as Welcoming Week in the City of St. Thomas, and further that the St. Thomas Elgin Local Immigration Partnership flag be flown at City Hall from October 22nd to 27th, 2024. Moved by Councillor Wiki, seconded by Councillor Baldwin-Sands.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Are there any opposed? Carried.
Next item is a request for jumbo lighting from Prostate Cancer Foundation Canada. I have a motion that the jumbo monument be lit in blue in recognition of Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. Moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Gibson.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Next is a request for a proclamation and flag raising from Talbot Trail Toastmasters. I have a motion that Council of the City of St. Thomas proclaim October 2024 as Toastmasters Month in the City of St. Thomas, and further that the Toastmasters flag be flown at City Hall from October 7th to 13th, 2024. Moved by Councillor Herbert, seconded by Councillor Wookie.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Final item under petitions, application has been made to the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario by the Old School Pizza Company on Princess Avenue for a liquor license for the indoor area at their property. Council may make representation to the commission concerning the application. Next order of business is unfinished business of council. Seeing if we have none on the agenda, your worship, we'll move into new business of council.
Councillor Baldwin-Sands.
Thank you. I would like to invite the mayor and members of council to the grand opening of the Deer Ridge Conservation Area. It's going to be held this Thursday, September the 12th at 2:30 p.m. The address is 147 Glengariff Drive in Talbotville. And we hope to see everybody there for the ribbon cutting and enjoy the new conservation area that we have in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Other items of new business, Councillor Peters.
I was away last week and one of our stops was in Huntsville. And I think growing up in St. Thomas, we all have fond memories of the Pinafore Park Railway.
Yeah.
And so I took the opportunity to go visit the railway. It's up and running again. It's not nearly as fun as Pinafore is because it just goes to Ferry Lake and back. But I missed the steam locomotive by one day. It stopped running on the 31st of August. But I still had a chance to ride the old, the other locomotive, the diesel locomotive and ride on it. And that the old coach that you all remember at Pinafore, it's been painted a different color from the blue, but then I'm looking at, you can see scratches in the paint and you can still see that old familiar bird's egg blue underneath. But it was a nice little reminisce of glory days of Pinafore Park.
Were you the oldest on the ride?
No, I was not the oldest on the right. And there were people there from the UK, from other parts of Canada. And the one guy I was speaking with from the UK, he was a rail buff and he was there. But the other fun one, just as my other railway activity was we were in North Bay as well. And North Bay has two carousels that are just gorgeous. And they have this little railway, just like they used to have at Springbank Park, or maybe it's still there. And it goes around and does this loop. And I thought, what a great thing it would be to have something like that in St. Thomas. And actually, getting off the train, and this man comes up to me and he says, "Are you Steve Peters from St. Thomas?" And I look and he says, Don Percher. He used to work at the psych hospital and was very active in the local Rotary Club and retired from here and went up to North Bay. But this little mini railway was really interesting. And I don't know how we could ever incorporate it into something, but it was fun.
Well, sure. You've now ruined the chance of us going late at night and just picking up the parts. Thank you. Any other new business? I have a couple. We had flag raising or the ringing of the bells at 9:09 this morning for fetal alcohol syndrome or FASD. And you all know Ethel forces us all to be there, and it went very well this morning. And then Councillor Gibson filled in for me at Big Brothers and Big Sisters flag raising this morning too. Coming up next week is the Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, and we all know Dave and Maureen put a lot of effort into that here in this community. So wanted to bring that up, and if you're wearing your gold ribbon, it's for that reason today. And so a lot going on in our community. And I thank all of the work from council, whether it's at new business openings. I know that Councillor McCauley was at, or flag raisings and other events in our community. Thank you all. It's been a very busy September, and it's only the 9th. So thank you. Seeing none.
I have no further items, Your Worship. We'll now move into bylaws. I have motion that leave be granted to bring in the bylaws. Moved by Councillor Peters, seconded by Councillor Clark.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
I have a motion by Councillor Peters, seconded by Councillor Clark, that the bylaws be now read a first time, referred to council and committee of the whole, and read a second time.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
First bylaw, please.
First bylaw is a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting held on September 9th, 2024.
Questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Next bylaw, please.
Second bylaw is a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute and affix the seal of the corporation to a certain agreement between the city and 1611905 Ontario Limited. This relates to McGregor Farm Phase 2A, 33 lots for single detached dwellings, 7 blocks for townhouses, and 2 blocks for future medium to high density.
Questions or comments? Councillor Peters?
Thanks very much, Madam Chair. A question for Lou Pompili, please. The two blocks for future medium and high density, are these the 2 blocks that council said no to and we were overruled by that outside unelected appointed agency called LPAT?
Mr. Pompili?
Yes.
They are.
I just remind the public that parts of these items that we're dealing with tonight were not decisions that were made by us as city council. They have been imposed on us.
Thank you, Councillor Peters. Any other comments or questions? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Next bylaw, please.
Third bylaw is a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute and affix the seal of the corporation to a certain agreement between the city and Shawside Development Limited. This relates to Shaw Valley Phase 7, 45 lots for single detached dwellings.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Next bylaw, please.
Fourth and final bylaw is a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute and affix the seal of the corporation to a certain agreement between the city and Ayahamu. This relates to a residential loan agreement under the Community Improvement Program for the property at 109 Ross Street.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. I rise to report the successful passing of 4 bylaws.
You.
I have a motion by Councillor Peters, seconded by Councillor Clark, that the report of council and committee of the whole on the 4 bylaws be received and adopted. The same be read a third time, engrossed, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed and numbered.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
No public notice or notices of motion this evening. There is a need to move into closed session. I have a motion that this meeting be closed to deal with a proposed or pending disposition of land. Moved by Councillor Wookie, seconded by Councillor McCauley.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, before I call the vote, I'll remind the folks watching at home and those in our gallery, thank you for coming for our open session tonight. We will come we'll be going into closed session. We'll come out of closed session only to adjourn for the evening. And we're going to try and do that in public tonight. We'll see how that goes. And so thank you all for watching at home, and we'll move now into the closed session. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Your worship, at this time, I have a motion that council rise from closed session. Moved by Councillor Herbert, seconded by Councillor McCauley.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. We have come out of closed session. We're back in open.
Your worship, no items in open session at this time. I have a motion for adjournment by Councillor Gibson, seconded by Councillor Kohler.
Thank you very much. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of adjournment? Any opposed? That is carried. We are adjourned.